Of all of the amp modelers that I was not able to get on the channel, the FLAMMA FX100 might have been the most requested. FLAMMA as a company have impressed me in the past with not only their effects pedals, but their preamp pedal as well. Well, lucky for me, they just released their new, larger, feature-packed FX200 with not only their distinctive design elements, but also their highly regarded effects, selection of high-quality amp models, and now a new touchscreen. This modeler really feels like it's a new breed of multi-effects unit. Today we're going to look at the FLAMMA FX200. It's a new multi-effects unit from FLAMMA. Let me go over how this is set up for this demo. I'm going out of the XLR output on the FX200 into my audio interface. That way we will be able to listen to some of the cabinet simulation inside of the FX200. I'm going out of the right output into a little power amp pedal that I have over there. That's from my buddy Shay from This Heavy Earth Effects. That is going into this 𝗦𝗣𝗘𝗏𝗶 4x12 cabinet that's being mic'd up with an 𝗦𝗐 Electronics X1A microphone. I'm also playing a Grimoire by Deviant Guitars. There's an 81 in the bridge, an 85 in the neck. There's more information on those down in the description below. So that's how I have everything hooked up. Let's turn this guy on. Oh, by the way, it does have a power switch. So they got that right. You'd be surprised how many of these things don't have power switches. Okay, loads up pretty quick here, and this is touchscreen. Let's jump right into the settings here. One of the things we're definitely gonna wanna do with the way that we have this set up, and maybe you would have a setup like this live or something where you have a cabinet on stage, but you wanna run directly out to front of house. We're gonna need to go into the menu here, and you can see you have all the different assignments for the foot switches. You have all the different assignments for the expression pedal. There is a second expression pedal input, so you can plug a second expression pedal, and you have the same assignments for that as well in here, but pretty much this expression pedal can control any of the parameters on the effects, it looks like. Let's go down here into the system. So you have your normal system controls here. You do have a global EQ, and I did boost the low end on this a little bit. I feel like when I set up multi-effects units this way with this cabinet, they really benefit from a boost in the low end, and I have this one set to about 56 Hertz, and I'm cutting about 3.5 decibels at 205 Hertz, and that just kind of has to do with the bass response on this cabinet. But this is what we want here. We have the Capsync. The Capsync is turned off. What that does is makes it so that when I switch amplifiers, it doesn't automatically assign the matching cabinet from that amplifier. When I switch it, it will just keep the same cabinet. That's how I want it set up, because we're gonna match as close to this cabinet as we can inside the FX200 here in a second. And then down here we have global cab. The left is on, the right is off. The left is the signal that is going into my audio interface. We want the cabinet emulation going on that output. The right is off because that is going into an actual cabinet, so that's why we have it set up that way. You have other stuff in here. You have your foot switch mode. You have your delay and reverb spillover, meaning like when you switch effects, if you want the trails to continue on, that's where you would set that. If you were using the FX200 as an audio interface, you can actually monitor with all your effects and stuff like that, but record a dry output, and that's where you would set it up. You can set that up independently for both the left and the right channels. Let's get out of this menu and let's start making some tones here. And the way this signal chain works is it starts from left to right and then loops around and goes from right to left down here. Another thing to note here is that you can't actually move the cab block. The cab block is always at the end. So on a lot of effects units, you can put the delay and the reverb after the cabinet and sort of simulate like post effects that you would hear in the studio, but that's not the case here with the FX200. This is more like what you would hear in a live scenario. Let's just go ahead and preemptively set the cabinet. And I'm gonna go with the one that I think matches this 𝗦𝗇𝗏 4x12 the most, and that is the Kali Rec 4x12B. And we can also change our tube type in here as well. I don't know how much this is actually changing the tone because I'm monitoring myself through an actual cabinet, and I think this is tied to the actual cab block here, but I don't really notice any difference, but when I'm editing this video, we'll see if that actually made a huge difference there. I'm just gonna leave it on 6L6s. And let's go into the amp block here. And I'm just gonna go straight away for something that I know is awesome because I've already spent a good amount of time with this. And that is the Bogner Ecstasy Red channel. Here it is at the stock settings. Sounds pretty decent. We actually need a noise gate in here. Let's close this for now. Let's select our noise reduction. Let's move this to the front of the signal chain. Double click that to open it. Turn it on. It's not doing anything yet because we need to set the threshold. I'll set it about there. And you have a few different, well, you have 3 different: suppressor, reducer, and gate. Are there really any other noise reduction methods? I don't think so, but those are the 3 that you have. So now, we have some proper gating going on. Let's go back into the amp and adjust this here. One of the interesting things that I noticed when I was dialing in this amp the first time is the controls can seem pretty sensitive at times, and they definitely affect each other, meaning like, if you turn up the bass, it's gonna affect the mids, and if you turn up the treble, it'll affect the mids, and if you turn up the mids, it affects both the bass and the treble. And that's not necessarily a pro or a con in my opinion, it's just something that you might wanna know going in. Okay, but let's dial it in, I'll show you what I'm talking about. One of the things that I think FLAMMA does really, really well in terms of like their amp simulation is the gain characteristic is very amp-like. A lot of times with these digital modelers, the gain can get really like grainy and sort of digital sounding when you start to increase it, for lack of a better word. And that's not the case with FLAMMA. I think they do a really, really great job of capturing like that analog clipping sort of sound. And while I wouldn't go as far to say as this behaves just like the real amp it's emulating, I think it is more in line with an analog piece of gear, if any of what I just said makes sense. Let's dial back the gain a little bit and let's see how it takes up boost. Turn that on, and I'm not gonna mess around. I'm just gonna go for the tried and true tube screamer, 808, gain down, volume up, and we're gonna put this tone near the middle. See what that sounds like? And you can hear that really tighten up the low end, and we didn't like overload our signal chain with too much gain and too much clipping and stuff like that. Okay, let's actually go back into the amp here. I'll probably turn the low end a little bit. Okay, let's see what the effects sound like, and then we'll come back and try a couple of the different amp models. We start with the mod block here. So the mod block is actually where you find your pitch effects. This does have pitch effects. Obviously you have your normal mod stuff in here, flangers, tremolos, things like that. But then down here on the bottom, you have pitch and poly pitch. Let's try the poly pitch. Set it up something like that. And I think it sounds pretty good here, but it does take up a lot of DSP. You can see up here, we're at 92% already. So let's go back in here. There is another pitch shifter. There's this mono pitch shifter. Let's set it up the same way and see what that sounds like by comparison. Okay, so the normal pitch shifter sounds pretty good too, but the real difference here is DSP usage. We did go down to 89%, which isn't a drastic reduction, but that might be the difference in between you overloading your DSP or not, so it's something to keep in mind. And for those of you who aren't aware, DSP stands for Digital Signal Processing. It is essentially the amount of memory that you have inside of this unit for the effects. If you go over the DSP usage, it will actually stop you from being able to use certain types of effects. There is an EQ and there's also an effects loop. I'm not really gonna go into those too much. I feel like most people know how those operate at this point, so I don't really feel like I need to dive into them, but let's check out what delays we have on hand here. So not a crazy amount of delays. We have 9 total delays. There's more than enough to do some damage in here. Everything from analog to reverse, dynamic, dual, mod delay. You know, I usually go for the tape delay. That's a delay that I really like. And just like with their effects pedals, the effects sound really, really good here. Now, same thing here with the reverb, not a ton of reverbs, but you have more than enough to probably get done what you need to get done. So let's just go straight into the mod. The mod reverb is probably the most atmospheric, crazy reverb they have in here. So let's turn this guy on. I'm not super surprised because the first effects pedals that I ever tried out from FLAMMA were really impressive. I liked them a lot. That was the delay and the reverb, and then they had that echo reverb or something. All of those effects were really excellent as well. It is the case with their multi-effects unit also. One more block here I didn't really go into, and that's mostly because I'm not controlling the foot controller with my foot because my foot's down here and the thing's up here, so, you know. I'm sure you guys are smart and you can figure that out. This is where we actually have our compressors, our auto wahs, crybabies, talking wahs, dynamic wahs. All that stuff's in here in the effects block. A lot of fun. I can mess around with this for a long time. Every signal chain does have these quick settings. You can go right here and you can adjust your input level, your Capsync, all of the options that you have in the system menu, but it's patch specific. So that is really nice. Let's go into our amp block and try some different amplifiers. We have a ton of stuff here. Let's try the 𝗦𝗍𝗘𝗏, which is the 𝗬𝗏. We'll go with 𝗬𝗏𝗶, which is, I think, the mid shift. And you can see what I mean there about the controls being, you know, very like fine-tuned, I would say. There's a lot of sensitivity in them, but that's cool because you can get a lot of tonal variation in there as well. All right, let's try one more amp here. Let's go with the Freeman 100 Distortion, which I'm assuming is based off of Freeman HBE. Man, and I just think between those 3 different amp models, they do sound quite a bit different, and I think that that says a lot about FLAMMA's amp modeling technology. I think it's really, really good. All right, guys, if you've made it this far, thank you so much. If you like my channel and want to help me out, check out the description below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.